But it's the stories of the remaining four gates, the Lion's Gate, the New Gate, the Damascus Gate, and the Dung Gate, that are stories of the battle to win hearts and souls. First, let us look at the story of the gates that protect the spirit of the city. These are the doorways to some of history's most coveted holy sites. The Dung Gate leads us out into the Kidron Valley and takes us back to the origins of Jewish settlement in this region. While the current gate structure was built by Suleiman, the gate itself points to a history stretching far back in time. Back to a point when the history of the Jewish nation and Old Jerusalem became forever entwined. It dates back nearly 1,000 years before Christ, when the Jewish King David captured the city from the Jebusites. At the time, the walled city was called Jebus and was considered one of the strongest fortresses in the area. The Jebusites were confident of their defenses, and when David led his troops on the city, they scoffed at him. But David's chief general and nephew learned of the secret tunnel to the Gihon Spring, which had been dug to protect the city's water supply. David sent his nephew Joab to find a way through the tunnel, beneath the walls, and into the city. It is believed that the shaft Joab climbed to reach the city is the one now called Warren Shaft, named after Charles Warren, a British explorer who unearthed it. Joab probably maneuvered his way through the tunnel and then up the dark, wet 43-foot shaft to surprise the unsuspecting Jebusites. Ironically, the first conquest of the walls of Jerusalem came not over, not through, but bypassed them by going under. The Israelites' young king made a spectacular entrance into his new conquest, Jerusalem. He danced through the gates with the sacred Ark of the Covenant and the tablets of the Law of Moses. The Old Testament says the Ark's entry into the city was done with much pomp and celebration. David was so excited he must have lost his head for a time. The book of 2 Samuel claims David danced before the Lord with all his might. His wild dancing embarrassed his wife, Michal, and she roundly criticized him when he returned home. But his act of bringing the ark into the city forever established Jerusalem as the center of Judaism. The city quickly became known as the City of David, and the king's influence is felt there to this day. And yes, this is the same David, the handsome young shepherd boy remembered for his stunning duel in the valley of Elah with the Philistine giant Goliath. Shunning armor, sword, and shield, young David took 5 small river stones and his sling. He slew the giant in the name of his God and the nation of Israel. Just outside Jerusalem's walls, archaeologists recently discovered the ruins of a city nearly 3,000 years old. All agree that these ruins were part of the actual city that David built. David began transforming his city into a showplace. He fortified the walls. But from the standpoint of history, his most important act was establishing the site of the future Jewish temples. David longed to build a house of God where he could place the Holy Ark. The Ark was a mobile shrine that had been the center of Jewish religious life during the 40 years they wandered through the deserts after the exodus from Egypt. After building his palace, David climbed to the highest point in the city, which was called Mount Moriah, and purchased the hilltop for 50 silver shekels from a Gittite named Obed-Edom. It had been used as the farmer's threshing floor. Plans were started for a splendid new temple. In the sacred writings of both Jewish and Christians, David is depicted as the epitome of a ruler pleasing to God. He was a statesman, a poet, a general, and a musician. All the country's rulers after that were measured by his standards. However, in 1 Chronicles, David was told by God that because he had shed much blood and fought many wars, he was not to be the person to build a new temple. Instead, his son, the wise and magnificent Solomon, would be given the task. In 970 BC, shortly before David's death at age 70, the aging king anointed his son the new king of Israel. Solomon proved to be a wise and ambitious king who brought his nation to new levels of wealth and influence. He was a visionary, a scholar, a poet, a master statesman, and an astute businessman. Solomon began enlarging the old city, bringing it approximately to the size it is today. Solomon created a large army of chariot warriors and horses, stationed along Israel's trade routes. His caravans and ships traveled the known world to bring back treasures never before seen in Israel. From India came gold and silver. From Asian ports came peacocks and apes, ivory and incense. One of Solomon's first acts was to complete a palace more spectacular than his father's. Solomon's palace astounded everyone who looked on it. Travelers reported that nothing like it had been seen in any kingdom. But Solomon was frequently given to excess, taking for himself 700 wives, mostly for political reasons, and 300 concubines, mostly for personal reasons. His saying, "Trade follows the bride," was famous throughout the empire. In Solomon's day, the population of the old city quickly doubled, and before his death, some estimates indicate it reached an incredible 25,000 people. It has only about 27,000 residents today. After building his palace with conscripted labor, Solomon then turned his attention to building the temple. 30,000 men and 7 years were required to complete this overwhelming task. The stones used in the construction of the temple were pre-finished at a quarry in the northern part of the land. In this depiction, we see what Solomon's temple may have looked like in its day. The temple grounds were bordered by as many as 12 gates. The temple was 90 feet long, 30 feet wide, and 45 feet high. It contained gold, silver, bronze, cedar, pine, and other fine materials. This house for God was without equal. In fact, the blueprint can be found in the Old Testament book of Chronicles. On the outside of the temple building, or hekel, Solomon ordered 2 hollow bronze pillars cast. Each were 27 feet high and 18 feet around. Each pillar was decorated with 200 pomegranates. The entire inside, from floor to ceiling, was paneled with cedar, and the floors were made of cypress boards. The remainder of the temple, other than the room containing the Holy of Holies, was 60 feet long. The inner room of the hekel was where the Ark of the Covenant was placed. This inner sanctuary was 30 feet long, 30 feet wide, and 30 feet high. Within the sanctuary, Solomon placed 2 statues of guardian angels made of olive wood, each 15 feet high. Tradition says they were placed so that their outspread wings reached from wall to wall, while their inner wings touched each other at the center of the room. The Ark of the Covenant was situated directly in front and below the wings of the cherubim. The veil separated the holy place from the most holy place. The veil was made of fine linen in colors of red and blue, embroidered with angels. Work on the majestic temple helped the growth and prosperity of Old Jerusalem. The wonder of the beautiful, mystical building fired the imaginations of the entire empire. From all over the ancient world, throngs streamed to Solomon's temple in wonderment. Jerusalem's reputation as a city with the sanctuary of God in its midst traveled to the ends of the earth. Religious festivals like the Passover, the Feast of Weeks, and the Feast of Tabernacles became huge events, filling the city with pilgrims. Local residents began renting out living space to visitors during festival time.